Early voting is underway this week for the May 6 municipal elections. Why are mayors of our largest cities in North Texas facing few, if any, challenges? Plus, a new bill would require you to vote in precincts again on Election Day instead of anywhere you want in your county. And when did the top legislative leaders in Texas become surfer dudes? We'll take a look at what's behind these tweets. Get your fix for Texas politics. I'm Jack Fink. Eye on Politics starts right now. Early voting for the May 6 municipal election began this week. Have you gone to the polls yet? The mayors of our largest cities in North Texas are facing little to no competition.
Usually the mayor's races for Dallas, Fort Worth, etc., are the signature events for these May municipal elections.
But SMU political science professor Matthew Wilson says not this year. Both Dallas Mayor Eric Johnson and Fort Worth Mayor Mattie Parker face minor challenges. Johnson faces a write-in candidate and Parker has 4 opponents. It's a similar situation in 3 other cities. Irving Mayor Rick Stopfer is running unopposed, while Arlington Mayor Jim Ross and Frisco Mayor Jeff Cheney face challengers.
There's simply no drama in any of those.
He says one reason is that these are nonpartisan races, so there's no Republican or Democratic messaging driving people to the polls. Another factor, he says, is residents seem content with the incumbents and how their cities are being run.
There has not been this groundswell of anger and discontent with the existing government that we've seen some places.
Last week, Irving's mayor welcomed Wells Fargo bank leaders and Governor Greg Abbott at a groundbreaking ceremony in Las Colinas for the bank's new regional campus. Mayor Stopfer says his job requires a major time commitment and that he believes he didn't attract opponents because people are still in the process of reevaluating their lives.
I think we're going through that, still some left over from COVID, and I think people are genuinely happy with what's going on. And I think then others are concerned about how much time and energy do I need to spend to really do this job.
What's different this year is that the last time the mayors in Dallas, Fort Worth, and Arlington ran, they were for open seats.
Usually, absent some sort of scandal or mismanagement or controversy, it's difficult to unseat an incumbent. And so a lot of people who might be thinking about a mayoral bid would rather just bide their time, wait for an open seat opportunity.
Early voting hours are between 8 and 5 p.m. on Friday. Over the weekend, they're different depending on the county you live in, so check the hours. And Monday and Tuesday, early voting is between 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. Same for Election Day, May 6th. And we'll have results live as they come into CBS News Texas on election night. Coming up a little later, we'll take a look at a bill that could change the way you vote on Election Day. Now, some other political headlines around Texas. The Republican majority in the U.S. House has passed a bill that would raise the debt ceiling in exchange for reducing spending and the national debt. The bill is likely dead on arrival in the Senate, which has a majority of Democrats. So that likely sets up negotiations between the 2 chambers and President Joe Biden. Republicans in the U.S. House are also unveiling a new border security bill that they say they will vote on next month. And back at the Texas Capitol, a bill is advancing that would limit and in some cases eliminate local government ordinances regulating labor laws and businesses. It's getting mixed reviews.
What we do is we install material handling and storage equipment systems. And
Greg Brown has owned W.W. Cannon in Dallas for 27 years, and in that time he's also opened offices in Houston, Austin, and San Antonio. He supports House Bill 2127 that, among other things, would ensure that cities and counties can't adopt ordinances that would regulate how much businesses pay their employees and how many breaks and other benefits they'd have to provide them.
if they didn't pass this law and municipalities begin to regulate my business, then in the state of Texas, I'm looking at over 1,400 municipalities that could possibly tell me I couldn't do this or that.
If the bill becomes law, it will eliminate some current local government ordinances. That includes one in Dallas that passed in 2015. It requires all workers on a construction site to receive a 10-minute break for every 4 hours they work. Hector Reyes Jr. with the IBEW Local 20 says he and his union and others strongly oppose the bill.
The breaks are extremely helpful. You know, you get to find shade when you're out on these projects that are outdoors, drink water. And
Irving Mayor Rick Stopfer is among the mayors across the state who say this will hurt their cities.
The challenge is not to go so far one direction or the other direction, that we lose our ability to serve our residents.
The bill passed the House last week and now heads to the Senate, where it will also likely be approved. Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick is among the Republicans who support the legislation and discounts what the mayors say.
I represent those voters too, and those voters reach out to us, and many aren't happy, particularly in big blue cities, of some of those ordinances that are passed.
For Greg Brown and Hector Reyes, this bill being debated at the Capitol hits home.
And how this bill is harming the people who are out here building Texas.
Texas is a great place to work, and we want to keep it that way.
This week, President Joe Biden launched his bid for a second term. He's the oldest sitting president. We asked North Texas Democrats what they think about his age and if it's a concern.
That's why I'm running for re-election, because I know America.
I think what was exciting about it is that it really showed his experience. It showed his passion.
Regina Montoya of Dallas has met President Biden and is one of 6 national co-chairs of the Women's Leadership Forum at the Democratic National Committee. She says the president will offer a contrast in policy and style from the Republican frontrunner, former President Donald Trump.
It's a big hello to Texas. We had tremendous.
Who attracted thousands of people at his rally in Waco last month.
To make sure that everyone in this country is...
You're going to see him in smaller areas where he's talking about how his policies have affected the everyday person.
At the age of 80, Mr. Biden is already the oldest sitting president and would be 86 at the end of a full second term if he's reelected. Those who voted for Biden are split on the issue of his age.
I think Biden's a little old to run, but he seems to be in good enough health, so okay.
No, I don't know if he's mentally, ready, I guess, for another 4 years. I would be concerned a little bit about his health.
I think that the candidates, both of the candidates who come out, are going to be people who have age, okay? And so I think that wisdom comes with age.
How big of a problem is that for him?
He's going to be showing that he has the stamina, the experience. Is you have a candidate who has every kind of experience to deal with the issues in front of this president.
While no major Democrat has challenged the president and Trump is ahead of the Republican field so far, it's setting up for a political rematch and one that's not popular.
That is, the polls clearly show that the majority of Americans would prefer something other than a Trump-Biden choice. And yet, we seem to be on a glide path towards getting that again.
Here's more of our conversation with SMU political science professor Matthew Wilson.
We well could have a rematch from 2020, even though most Americans definitively do not want that. That is, the polls clearly show that the majority of Americans would prefer something other than a Trump-Biden choice. And yet, we seem to be on a glide path towards getting that again. President Biden is going to declare his reelection candidacy this week, despite polls showing that a majority of Democrats do not want him to run again, would prefer another candidate on the ballot. Of course, they're not all agreed about who that other candidate would be. But President Biden, if he were to win re-election, would be serving in the presidential office until he's 86 years old. That is unprecedented in American history. And of course, that will be an issue going forward in the campaign. So I don't think you'll see a lot of excitement surrounding President Biden's announcement. I think most Democrats are going to be lukewarm and unenthused about that. But it's not clear what the alternative is. In the same way that, President Trump, when he declared his reelection candidacy, outside of his hardcore of supporters, there was not tremendous excitement. But again, Republicans who don't necessarily want Trump have not coalesced around a single alternative. So we've got that dynamic going on in both parties.
In the Republican Party, you have Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, who hasn't declared, but as you and I have discussed before, seems like he's all but running. Right. And that is a dynamic that a lot of people are going to be watching. On the Democratic side, though, you have Robert Kennedy, who's tossed his hat into the ring. Marianne Williamson has tossed her hat into the ring, but no one else is. Who would challenge the president? What Democrat who's an elected official would challenge a sitting president?
Well, the candidates that you mentioned, Robert Kennedy, Marianne Williamson, those are fringe candidates. They're not going to meaningfully challenge Joe Biden for the Democratic nomination. And certainly someone who's part of the president's administration can't challenge him. So that takes out a whole host of people. The biggest name that has been kicked around as a potential alternative to Biden for the Democratic nomination is Governor Gavin Newsom of California. It's quite clear that Newsom would like to be president. It's quite clear that he has ambitions. I doubt he would throw his hat in the ring to actually challenge Biden, though, because it is very difficult to unseat an incumbent within a primary. It is a real uphill battle. But if someone were going to do it who would actually have some credibility, I think Newsom would be the name to look to.
Well, it's certainly going to be a very interesting race to watch because, you know, here, like you said, you have on one hand, people in the polls don't want a rematch from 2020. And yet when you ask for the alternatives, the president and former President Donald Trump are still at the top of their respective primary polling.
That's right. And part of that is because for those of us who follow politics pretty closely, it's hard to believe, but even these relatively high profile people like Ron DeSantis or Gavin Newsom, the average voter outside of their state doesn't know a lot about them. That the average voters are not particularly dialed in to the political landscape around the country. And so they have name recognition hurdles to surmount before they can effectively challenge a Donald Trump or a Joe Biden who has universal name recognition.
Now to a new bill that passed the state Senate that would change the way you vote on Election Day here in Texas. Residents in most North Texas counties can vote anywhere in their county on Election Day.
The motion's adopted.
But a new bill that's passed in the Texas Senate would change that to instead require all voters in the state to only go to their precincts on Election Day. Republican Senator Bob Hall, whose district includes Dallas County, wrote the bill and says he doesn't believe there is enough transparency or accuracy in countywide voting.
Some might consider that to be an inconvenience, but I think the security of an election is far more important than the convenience of voting.
There's just no evidence that there's any problem whatsoever with the systems that we have.
Democratic Senator Nathan Johnson of Dallas says any claims of widespread problems with countywide voting are unsubstantiated. An audit of Dallas, Tarrant, Collin, and Harris counties by the Secretary of State found some isolated problems, but nothing widespread, including fraud.
I want people to be encouraged to vote, and eliminating one of the only things we've done recently to improve convenience is just a huge step backwards.
Some voters tell us they like being able to vote at any polling location in their county on Election Day.
No, I don't live anywhere near this place. I happen to be shopping and eating near here. It allows me to vote near here, and that's the way it ought to be.
It makes it a lot more easy. You know, usually people work and, you know, they have busy schedules, and it would be very hard, you know, to vote if they do pass that type of bill.
If approved, the bill would not make changes to early voting. People across Texas could still vote anywhere in their county.
We're taking this a step at a time. I very much would have liked to gone to precinct voting for both early voting and Election Day. Matter of fact, I would like to see us move away from having a separate early voting and a separate Election Day.
Senator Hall's current bill goes to the House. No word when it will be debated there. As the Texas legislative session enters its final month, Republican majorities in the House and Senate will have to iron out their differences and strike a deal on a variety of bills. One of the biggest priorities is how to give Texas homeowners and businesses property tax relief. Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick has criticized the House's bill and Speaker Dade Phelan, calling him California Dade. Patrick has repeatedly suggested he may force Governor Greg Abbott to call a special session over this issue. In response, Phelan tweeted photos, including one without his shirt and a surfboard saying, quote, "Stoked for some tasty waves in the Texas coast this summer after Tex Ledge hits its gnarly sine die," which marks the end of the regular legislative session. Patrick then tweeted a mock photo of him on a surfboard saying, quote, "Glad to see California Dade has a sense of humor. Got to admit, he's in better shape than me. But homeowning surfer dudes, especially those over 65 and their surfer buddies under 65, all know the Senate's homestead exemptions are the better wave to ride." We'll see which bill crashes and which one makes it to the legislative shore. That's all for Eye on Politics this week. I'm Jack Fink. Thank you for joining us. You're watching CBS News Texas.